than that. Governing party stalwart Gabi Asaro-Chidako questioned what he called her, quote, emotional outburst when she decided to join her colleague pensioners to picket at the finance ministry to demand an exemption for her bonds from the domestic debt exchange program. Well, today, in an act of defiance, immediate past Chief Justice Sophia Akufo came out all guns blazing, taking on Gabi. Listen.
He can decide on, he doesn't decide for me what I need to do and what I do not need to do. It's as simple as that. I don't have time for things like that. People like that are not important to me or to my life. It's a disturbance. That's all I've got to say about it. Gabi Ochiridako can call me paranoid. I don't care. We're talking about people, we're talking about human beings, we're talking about people who have served this country and have served well and served hard. Not easy service when you're not a member of government and you're calling yourself a member of government. So that's all I've got to say about this matter. That's why I'm still sitting here. Listen, sticks and stones may break my bones, but blah blah will not hurt me. No, and insult is the weapon of the pin-brained. That's all I've got to say. I'm not going to trade words with pin-brains. I'm sorry.
Colleague James Aveji was once again with the immediate past Chief Justice and other individual pensioners and joins me in the studio now. James, that was blistering from the Chief Justice. Gabi Asaro-Chidako's criticism of her was that she and her other colleagues have been granted an option to self-exempt. Well, today, the Finance Ministry says they will honor all bond obligations and specifically mention pensioners, including the former Chief Justice, by the way, who chose not to participate. So did she accept that assurance at all?
Evans, she rejected that position by government. She said just a few days ago the Finance Ministry wrote to other groups assuring them of their exemption from the program. She holds the view that the Finance Ministry must play fair by responding to their letters, communicating the promise in writing, something they can hold on to and not just talk.
But that whole program is now over, isn't it? Yes, and we chose not to sign on to it. Now, the way things are going, what I sense and what I smell is the creation of two categories of people or two classes of people. Those who have been exempted by the issuer. I think Doctor was very clear with the distinction. Yes. And then now they are calling those who refused to sign on to the debt exchange. They're calling them self-exempted. No, they simply refused to sign. They just simply want to stand by the original bond that they have with the government. And the word bond is not used as a casual term. Bond means tied to.
My word is my bond.
Yes. And when a government's bond can be tossed up and down the tides like that, flip-flop, that's a serious thing. For me, my problem with this whole thing is the destruction of the image of this nation, and something that is being done which will last for generations. It took a long time before normal Ghanaians would even buy anything that is government, because there was always the suspicion, tomorrow you don't know what will happen. Now they are reintroducing that. All that needs to be done. And Doctor was talking about a letter, simple letter that was written by the association to the minister. Exempt us from your program. I think that's the gist. I always like to distill things to their lowest common denominator. Exempt us, we are pensioners. Up to now, I've seen a copy of the letter. It's dated 7th January. According to Doctor, it was delivered on 10th January. Up to now, there's not even a note. I'm not even saying a letter, a note of acknowledgement. And yet, a few days ago, similar letters that had been written to the minister have been responded to, whereby he has categorically exempted other groups. Why? And you know, when I cannot fathom the reason for something being done in a particular way, especially when it's been done for others, but it's not being done for others, I start getting suspicious. I've grown to be to the age where I've seen it all, and therefore I easily become suspicious.
Okay. Is there a mistrust for government where you cannot take government on its own word when it says it will honor your bond?
Paper talks. Empty talk flies with the wind. Yes. So a press release is one thing. A letter in response to a specific request is another thing altogether. Because when we've reached a point where we're feeling uncomfortable, even though we are holding government bonds, listen, it's a trust issue. Yes.
Did we get a confirmation from her whether or not she will be pursuing legal action now that the domestic election is over?
Yes, Evans. She stated that it is a decision she would consider as an individual against the state to retrieve her money.
That one, I'm not speaking as a representative. The representative for the association is Dr. Anani Entry. I'm not going to purport to speak for the institution. I'm not a lawyer anymore. I'm not qualified to represent anybody in court. I'm a retired judge.
On your service as in legal advice as to what to do?
I do not even hold a lawyer's practicing license anymore.
If government's position doesn't change, would you advise that?
That's certainly a strong option. For myself, I will. For myself, it will be Sophia Akufo versus, right? But not on behalf of the association. The association will have to make its decision. So we are waiting. When they become due, we shall see. But it will be better that for all of us, and for the nation too, that he responds to the letter that's been sent to him. Why? What's stopping, apart from pride, what else is stopping the issuance of a response to the letter?
Are they back tomorrow too?
They have indicated that they will be there as long as it takes the government to grant their request. What is worth noting is that they will be in Parliament on Thursday when the Finance Minister appears before the House to give clarification on the process so far.
James, thank you very much. Well, Sophia Akufo is now embroiled in this very public war of words with Gabi, who is a stalwart of the governing party and a relative of the president. But it is the president who appointed her as Chief Justice after a long, healthy relationship. Court correspondent Joseph Blay joins me with more on this. Joseph, for those who do not know, what really did Gabi say that has elicited such a strong response from the former CJ? Unmute Joseph. Unmute Joseph. Okay, we can't seem to hear him. We'll try and rectify that very quickly. But Joseph has been digging into a long relationship. Yes, I can hear you. Do we know, just for those who haven't followed what transpired over the weekend and eliciting this strong response, what did Gabi say?
6 tweets that he put out. The first one here says, as an individual bondholder myself, I wish to join others in thanking those like Senor Hosi, Evans Mensah and co who volunteered to lead the advocacy, resulting in a far better offer for individual bondholders, into bracket, particularly pensioners, than the original offer. Are you cool? Number 2, whilst I have sympathies for those picketing, I think we should be bold enough to ask them what really is the purpose. Why picket over an offer which you have the liberty not to accept? You are asking to be exempted, but from an improved offer program which is voluntary. Number 3, then former Chief Justice Sophia Akufo may mean well, but she erred big time in a basic appreciation of the issues. Rather than asking the government for exemption at this late hour, why did she simply not exempt herself from exchanging her original bond for the new one? Why picket over something you don't like, the improved offer, when you have the right not to sign up? Sorry, but I struggle to get her emotional outburst over exemption. I hope she won't volunteer to picket tomorrow and on the same issues when the time to sign up has expired. I was among those who pleaded for the exemption of pensioners, but the government had to balance all that with the need to protect the economy for the 33 million population and settle on a 15% yield maturing in 5 years instead of 15, and that the individual was free not to participate. Now, the final tweet is that for a former Chief Justice to take up a noble cause such as she did, but at such late hour when all was done and for all that publicity, she owed it to herself and her social standing to have understood the issues far better than what she exhibited last Friday. She is bigger than that.
And Joseph, many will find this tension between herself and the government one that definitely causes a stir because of what we know her relationship is with the current president as well.
In fact, the Chief Justice, shortly after receiving a qualifying certificate to practice as a lawyer, trained as a lawyer at the law firm Akufo Prempe and Co. And we know that that law firm, the president is one of the founders of that particular law firm. So she trained there. We also know for a fact through the president's own comments that she served as the president's first junior. And so there are people that we know very well, even though she was already on the bench when the president made her Chief Justice. We know that from her initial training up until the appointment as Chief Justice by the president, they have that close relationship.
And we're also learning that the president actually publicly testified to her ability to be independent-minded and strong-willed, determined to express her thoughts regardless of who oxes God, such as we're seeing right now.
In fact, this was during his announcement of her appointment as Chief Justice, and he made reference to the fact that she was the first junior he trained, and also about her independent mindedness and integrity, which is why he was appointing her as Chief Justice.
I have known Justice Sophia Akufo well for over 40 years. Indeed, she was my first junior in practice, as barristers call their work. She impressed me considerably with her hard work, her capacity for detailed research, her independence of mind and spirit, her honesty and integrity, her deep-seated respect for the rule of law, and her abiding belief in the sovereignty of Almighty God. I believe these are the qualities which sustained her brilliant career as a lawyer that propelled her to the notice of the first president of the Fourth Republic, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings, who appointed her to the Supreme Court on 30th November 1995, some 22 years ago. She has been one of the leading lights of the court since her appointment, and her contribution to the court's work and the growth of our nation's jurisprudence has been extensive. She has enriched her judicial experience by serving with credit on continental judicial bodies, such as the African Court on Human and People's Rights, where she ended up as president of the court. I have no doubt that Justice Sophia Akufo will be a worthy successor to Chief Justice Wood and uphold jealously the independence of the judiciary. I expect discipline, fairness, integrity.
And I want to bring in right now Dr. Evans Mensah with University of Ghana Business School. He is an expert in political communications, and his research has always centered around political marketing. Joins us on this raging feud between Sophia Akufo. We just told you that relationship that exists between herself and the president, and of course you now have this feud that has been triggered because a relative of the president, the stalwart of the party, Gabi Aserocho Dako, had taken her on publicly. Dr. Kobe Mensah, thank you for your time here on Top Story. I mean, what do you read into what is happening? I mean, between the CJ and Gabi, do you think that what is playing out right now publicly could have ramifications for the government, for also the governing party as well?
Evans, thanks for having me. Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the happenings, I mean, all the up and downs that we've been experiencing with regards to the DDP, I think the Honorable Sophia Akufo's actions in terms of picketing has really had a very big blow to the government in terms of the image, that they represented. I mean, I had always said that, people of public stature like, Sophia Akufo would not take any action just because of their own interest, but the interest of the general public. Mind you, her position is not because of, herself, but she's represented, the entire country in terms of, the legal positions, etc. So for me, I think that it's very instructive that, people like her would represent the feelings and the thoughts of the general public in this particular conversation. And so any attempt to sort of intimidate her, I don't think would work, because she's very much aware of what she's doing as representing the people of this country. Now, she wouldn't need any commendation, but I think that we would have to sort of commend her for the work that she's done and perhaps give her the moral support. I wish many other people in her capacity or, having similar capacities would actually demonstrate, as she's doing, so that the general public would know that indeed there are people of that stature who actually care so much about them, their welfare, and would be prepared to stand, behind them.
Listening to her today, she indicated that those comments appear to have galvanized her to even go today. And Gabi, in his post, suggested that he was hoping that she won't return to the finance ministry because this matter has been settled. Do you believe possibly Gabi may have miscalculated in attempting to respond to her and take her on publicly?
Absolutely. I think it's a miscalculation. Because, you see, if you look at the history of political communication, most big decisions, political decisions, haven't really happened with some sort of jojo. I mean, most of the time, people have actually demonstrated, for big decisions to happen. I mean, if you look at the universal suffrage, for example, it took, quite a lot of struggle. I mean, demonstrations upon demonstrations in America, in the UK, etc., to get people to vote. Otherwise they were not going to have that. I mean, so for you to try and intimidate such a person who knows what she's doing, who understands the political system, and who very much is aware that it is not, just by talking, especially with the issues that's going on, but it's about making a bold statement would make the government respond. I think that Gabi might have actually miscalculated.
What follows you see both for government and for the party, considering that we are 2 years shy of a major election, if at all?
Evans, I think that the NPP administration had actually dissipated the key segment that actually supported them. I mean, the middle class was huge for this, administration to come to power. Not to talk about the various activism that they might have done, not necessarily a campaign, but a lot more people believed in this government. Remember the Occupy movement, for example, and they were represented by people, of a certain social standing, in a capacity, not even if it's not equivalent to Sophia Akufo, but within that particular, social standard. And almost all of them seem to be departed, from the government and actually calling the government to do the right thing. So certainly they have eroded almost every conceivable support that they had coming into government, and that's very worrying. For me, I think that the MPP is gradually, moving into a space where they can no longer claim to be the best managers of the economy, for example. They can no longer hold on to be the due process party that we talk about, because we haven't seen any proper due process from this administration. So they have actually eroded every brand equity that they had coming to the government.
I mean, you teach political communications, political marketing. How should the government party handle this particular crisis, seeing that middle class are now taking to the streets, protesting, even the former CJ, who is more middle class than middle class people, are there campaigning and protesting? How should the government approach it?
I mean, I think that when brands are in crisis, they move into crisis, management era. I mean, we've seen that the government is trying to mobilize key stakeholders into conversation. I don't want to see them trying to bamboozle or trying to intimidate people like Sophia Akufo, but trying to, let people understand that indeed we understand the times that we're in, and have some sort of a back end, conversations with them, rather than publicly trying to ridicule, trying to bamboozle, or trying to intimidate people like that. So they should move into crisis, management mode, try and get people of that stature backdoor to negotiate, instead of making some public comments that are not necessary.
Dr. Evans Mensah, thank you very much. And in the last hour, the Finance Ministry has issued another statement. And George Jaffe is joining me with details of this. George, I'm getting the sense that the settlement date has now been extended.
Yeah, Evans, you're right on that one. Initially in the statement, they announced 14th of February, that is Valentine's Day, but looks like now you're looking at 21st of February, 2023.
Okay, what else is the Finance Ministry saying? That do we get additional details on how much bonds came in? And
well, even initially we had we're looking at somewhere around 137 billion in terms of the value or the worth of bonds that we were looking at restructuring. Now, if you look at this final result, you're looking at a situation where it came down to about 97 billion Ghana cedis. And in terms of the bonds that were tendered into this whole offer, we're looking at a value of around 83 billion Ghana cedis, and that's wrap up to this 83% or 84% in terms of the percentage that they got for this whole offer. So you're looking at 84.91%. And even again, if you go through the statement, there are some interesting statements that the Ministry of Finance makes that will still be asking ourselves some questions as well. The point 3 in the official press release from the Ministry of Finance says that to provide sufficient time for the settlement of dates and for efficient manner, the government is extending the settlement date from this bit as well, and give the details and all the rest. Now, if you come to point 4, it says that in addition, we have received expression of interest from other stakeholders to participate in a similar exchange. The government is modifying the 6-month clear market provision of this new bond program. So, Evans, who are those stakeholders who have expressed interest in participating in this offer that didn't have that opportunity to do so when this program went on? And that is something that we might want some clarity on what does actually mean in terms of this whole debt exchange program.
George, thank you very much. We're going to get more on this on NewsNight. We'll be talking to Professor Godfred Bokwing, who has been studying these documents as well, and to break them down. In the next 60 minutes here on NewsNight, pensioner individual bondholders declared they will still not let the finance minister rest, dismissing government's assurance that their due bonds will be honored in full.
If the minister doesn't want to use the word, the problem will not be solved. If the minister refuses to use the word exempted, you have been exempted, as the minister used for the pension funds and the doctors' fund, this matter will not end.
We examine a clause in the Finance Ministry's statement causing concern among individual bondholders, which appears to introduce a condition for the honoring of those due bonds. Also tonight, clash at University of Ghana between former residents of Commonwealth Hall and the police, with many already arrested.
we want to make it emphatic clear today that the stone silent by the university management not to kowtow to the decision of the court is what? Tantamount to perjury.
Details as tension rises over school management silence on accommodation controversy after court placed an injunction on the implementation of a residential policy.
And in business, Finance Ministry pegs value of bond tendered in domestic debt exchange program at about 83 billion Ghana cedis.
And in sports, Champions League returns tonight on your Superstation with Paris Saint-Germain taking on Bayern Munich.
And then later we'll tell you why an MP for Kpando is accusing government of incompetence and neglect of the NIA office in her constituency.
It's a very pathetic situation. It's a high mark of incompetence. I mean, I can't give any other reason to that, because 5,000 cedis shouldn't be a problem to the MPP government. And
we'll hear from the legislators. The minister is hauled before the House to explain. You want to stay with us. Plus, of course, on Valentine's Day special feature, we tell you the kinds of gifts and big plans people are making for their loved ones.
On a Champions League day. So I'm going to use that kind of match between Bayern and PSG as something to entertain myself.
The finance minister may have finally categorically declared in a formal government statement that he will honor all due bonds held by government bondholders in full. In fact, individual bondholders in full. But that assurance has tonight done little to stop pensioners from protesting. Government today announced it has achieved its target for a successful debt exchange program and committed to pay all individual bondholders who refuse to sign on to that program. Pensioner individual bondholders, including the former Chief Justice Sophia Akufo, however, say they still will not give the finance minister rest unless he explicitly grants them exemption. Now, they were back with placards protesting at the premises of the finance ministry today. Dr. Edward Anientri is their convener.
Part of that group that we call self-exempt. That is not we want. We wanted to be self-exempt, and we are still fighting. We want to be exempted, and we are still fighting to be exempted. Now, the difference between exemption, the issuer exemption, and the self-exemption. If any issuer of any security is having problems and they want to restructure the securities, and he tells you that for you, your bonds that you are holding, it is not part of the bonds or the loans I cannot pay. I may not be able to pay. So for you, don't come here. Rest. Yours is not part of the bonds I think I will have problem paying. So you, the loans that I have taken from you, I'll continue to do as I'm doing. There's no challenge whatsoever handling the loans I have taken from you. What I am restructuring are the loans that I may find difficult paying. And that is why I'm restructuring that side. So from day one, there is a difference. When the man say, the issuer say, you are exempted. Go home, go and rest. If you like, don't even read anything about debt domestic exchange because you are not part of it. But the others, I may have some challenges paying. That is why I'm exempting. So from day one, there is difference between the two groups. If you move forward, when the time comes and because the issuer has some impairment in its income generation ability, he is unable to pay. Those who were exempted, when they are talking to the issuer, what they will ask the issuer, you told us we are not part of these problems that you are having, paying coupons and whatever. That's why you exempted us. You didn't bring us in. You've said we are not part. Why haven't you given us our principal or our coupon? The issuer will just have to be begging, please, yes, I'm having problems. I'm trying to get you money as soon as possible. Those who have been self-exempted, those who have exempted themselves, if they go, the issuer still has the obligation to pay them. The issuer has still the obligation to pay both the issuer exempted holders and the self-exempted holders. So that obligation is still there. But these people, when they go, the issuer will say, well, I haven't gotten the money for you yet. I told you it's likely I will have some problems. So wait, I'm trying to get money to pay you. And that is why I say that your bond, I will term it as I told you so bond. The issue I will say, yes, I told you so, that I may not be able to pay.
The I told you so bond. Now, one of the central concerns for the pensioner individual bondholders is a clause in the ministry's statement that says the due bonds will be honored, quote, in line with government fiscal commitments. Now, some have interpreted this clause to mean a conditional payment of those bonds when they are due. My colleague with the research desk and data analyst Kofi Ajay joins me in the studio with more. So, Kofi, let's break down when government says fiscal commitments. They say they'll pay the bonds, they'll pay you in full your interest and your principal in full in line with government fiscal commitment. Let's first isolate. What are government fiscal commitments?
So if you go to the 2023 budget, government has about 6 fiscal commitments. And first one is compensation of employees. The second is use of goods and services. The third is interest payment. We also have subsidies. The fourth is, the fifth actually is capital expenditure, and we have arrears clearance. And so if you look at these 6, items that we're talking about, it's around 205 billion Ghana cedis.
So that's a total government. That's a total government commitment
for 2023.
What's the figure again?
205 billion Ghana cedis.
Okay, now the debt has been restructured. The domestic debt has been restructured, so we know the total amount, and we do the computation. Will government have the means to take care of all these fiscal commitments and still pay the individual bondholders and others who didn't join the debt exchange program?
So we know 205 billion cedis is the total expenditure projected for 2023. But if you look at government's total revenues and grants for 2023, it's just 143.96 billion Ghana cedis.
So there's a gap.
There's a huge gap of 61 billion cedis. Now, three line items, Evans. Compensation of employees, 44.99 billion cedis. Interest payments on loans, 52.55 billion cedis. And arrears clearance is around 14.44 billion. The three is around 111.98 billion. If you subtract this from the total revenue that we are expecting for 2023, it means that if government pays compensation of employees, interest payments, and clears arrears, the amount left for government to feed on is about 31.98 billion cedis. So there's definitely no space for government to do this. Now, if you also look at domestic, debt obligation for 2023, and the total revenue that we're talking about, 143.96 billion cedis. Maturing bonds for 2023, if you look at the memorandum that government has actually made public, is around 31.313 billion cedis. That's just maturing bonds, principals. Interest payment on loans for domestic bonds is around, or for all domestic loans, is around 31.3 billion cedis. If you add these two, it's around some 107 billion cedis. Now, if you subtract this also from, that's if you add compensation of employees, 107 billion cedis. And if you subtract this from how much government wants to get as revenue from 2023, we're just left with 35.4 billion cedis.
But the restructuring now gives them some room.
So it means that if government is successful and is able to do this restructuring that they said,
which they say they have now successful.
Exactly. It means that the 31.3 billion cedis that they've actually projected to spend on interest payment will be free, or some majority of it will be free for government to spend on other things. Because if you look at the bonds,
including paying the individual bond,
absolutely, yeah, exactly.
Let's bring in Professor. Let's give in Professor Bokwing, who joins us now. Professor Godfred Bokwing is a professor of finance and has been studying all this very closely. Prof, thank you very much. I know you're possibly going to greet individual bondholders before we start, but I need to ask you, when you read that line, and that line, most individual bondholders, we've been waiting to see that for a long time. We saw that line. Finance Minister says, I will pay you. I'll pay your interest. I'll pay your principals as well. But then that line, that little, few words, in line with government fiscal commitments, when you read that, should there be cause for concern for anybody?
Yeah, good evening, and good evening to our cherished listeners, especially individual bondholders at this stage.
We accept.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there is risk. There is risk. It's not the same as saying that you have been exempted. But I was a bit uncomfortable when the finance ministry included that line. Why am I saying so? From day one, the Ministry of Finance has set a target, 80%. And if the ministry had issued a statement that the domestic debt testing had been successful, more than 80% actually tendered their old bonds for the new ones. I think we should now be looking at how do we calm the market? How do we calm stakeholders? How do we build forward better, inclusively? How do we build confidence in our financial sector? How do we build confidence in our economy? So this is not the stage to begin to introduce some kind of doubt and uncertainty. There is already too much uncertainty out there. The market just doesn't like that. Of course, the president himself told us that you can't pay the day, right? So at this stage, one would have expected that the show of power and all of that would not be elevated to the level where the finance minister is trying to exhibit right now. So I think that that is not necessary. The government has reached more than 80%. That will be good news for them. But of course, that is how much that's a price institutions and individuals have had to pay in cleaning up the mess government has created. That is the price.
I mean, this morning
there's no point celebrating successful domestic debt exchange, because remember that is price. Remember that's money lost.
I mean, Prof, when I woke up this morning and I saw the statement and I saw the two paragraphs were repeated. In fact, there was one up there in the first page and the second and the last page, all repeating will pay you. I said, hallelujah. But you're telling me tonight that that line that was repeated again in both paragraphs should give me cause for concern. I possibly jubilated too early.
Yes. You know, of course, in the past couple of decades, we've been running budget deficits. Okay, so to that extent, but we see elevated deficit. And the whole essence of taking the steps to restructure your debt is that there was no way Ghana government could meet its financial obligations as and when they fall due without sharp adjustment to its fiscal policy in terms of expenditure and revenue and the financing mix. So there is risk, there is probability that we may not be able to pay. And that is why government is embarking upon the preemptive debt restructuring largely. Great. But my point is that now that you have reached your target, because from day one, government did not set out to achieve 100% surrounding. No. Government's target was 80%. You have achieved that. That in itself implies that you were anticipating that some bondholders will not surrender, will not swap their old bonds for the new ones. But the point is that at this stage, there's no point in demonstrating or show of power that yes, there's risk. And there's a possibility. And you know, if government decides not to honor the old bonds, it will be an intention not to do so now, and simply not because the situation demands so. Why are we saying so? Because there is demonstrable evidence that with a certain level of expenditure cut, wastefulness, governance reform, we could actually come out of this much better and stronger than the approach government has adopted. I think we need to get that through. And therefore, what I would expect will be for government to clarify and calm the market. We need to calm the market and build forward better, inclusively. That should be our goal now. Because don't forget that, and let me also say, and let me congratulate Ghanaians, financial institutions and individual bondholders, the media, that We have come this far because we held on. We stayed together. We pushed the government. Evans, why am I saying so? If you look at the original debt estimate that the government announced on the 5th of December 2022, if we had allowed that to stay, the losses would have been more than 80%. Now, with the improved offer, we are looking at something close to 40%. That's progress. That is how much we have saved on the books of financial institutions and some individuals. So we need to make progress now. Now we need to look at how we're going to restructure the external debt, okay, as quickly as possible. We need an IMF program latest by the end of Q1. Those are the things. I think that is what government should focus its attention on now and provide greater clarity. There is no point. In fact, this is not governance to see pensioners to continue to press for them to be exempted. Evans, what country is this? Can we look forward to pension? It's scary. For all that these people have done for this country, I'm sorry, we should not take them through that. So I think that is not that significant. The fact that you had a target, you had achieved that target. Remember, people had to pay a price that some of them will not recover from in the next 15 years. But we know that we have to do this in order to restore macroeconomic stability. But that in itself is not an end. It's only a means to an end. But we chose a more expensive way. We chose a lazy approach. Government failed to lead by example. And that is why financial institutions and individuals have to now lead by example
and carry the burden. Let me ask you, I'm looking at the raw numbers from the ministry now in terms of the debt exchange outcome. And principal amount tendered and accepted amounted to 82.9 billion. If you look at the initial target that was announced, that leaves a gap of a difference of 40 billion. I mean, if you put the exempted pension funds total amount and individual bondholders who did not sign on together, if you put all that together, it's nowhere near 40 billion. I mean, can we begin to explain that gap?
That gap, if you look at previous years, government had operated budget deficits, and yet they were able to honor their debt obligations. They did so. Evans, if you look at the press conference that the IMF gave right after they reached staff level agreement with Ghana government, they indicated certain prior actions. One was debt restructuring. We also talked about audit of COVID-19 expenditure. We can talk about. Then they also talked about assurance from our financiers and development partners that they will commit to closing the funding gap. Why is that important? Because the 2023 budget that the IMF knew about had a huge deficit. And given that government had lost access to the international capital market and also in the domestic market, in the medium to the long term end of the market, we've lost that. What that meant was that in closing that deficit in the budget itself would be very difficult, and therefore some assurance from our creditors, from our financiers, development partners, bilateral, multilateral, will be key in moving the staff level agreement to the board level. So beyond debt restructuring and all of that, we need that assurance. I'm sure government has been working on that, because without that, it was going to be very difficult to translate the budget aspirations into actual. Now, if you look at it in the time past, of course, we don't know what the 17th IMF program will look like, but we have a fair idea. In translating the program objectives into actual, Evans, you will require more than the $3 billion over 3 years that the IMF will be able to provide. So that in itself, if you cost the program, you will need more than $3 billion. That must also come from our partners, bilateral, multilateral, financiers, to close that gap. Other than that, the program can only achieve limited effectiveness. So you are looking at all of this together within a certain context of government's own fiscal commitment, and that is where the risk is. If you look at the overall picture and you look at as an individual bondholder without express statement that you are exempted, which means that we will prioritize the payment of your bonds relative to other government commitments. It's about prioritization.
Prof, thank you very much. I'm grateful that you joined us with your thoughts on this particular subject. I want to bring in the convener of the Individual Pensioners Bondholders Association, Dr. Edu Ananiemchi, joins us on the telephone line right now. Hello, Doc.
Yeah.
Great to have indicated to the police formally that they'll be protesting. A 4-day protest from next week is that of the Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana, led by Martin Kpebu. Now that they have a double assurance from the Finance Ministry that their bonds will be honored in full, principal and interest, will they still go ahead? Mr. Kpebu, will you still go ahead?
Yes, Evans, we definitely will. Let me correct something before we continue this. I heard Dr. Duan and Ninchi say government hasn't defaulted. Hey, it's not a statement we should lightly make. You see, this is the point. For hundreds of thousands of individual bondholders, they were never told and never subscribed to a situation where the payment date comes and government is not able to pay and government has 15 days extra. No. What I'm saying is that it is not part of their contract. You can ask individual bondholders to show you their bonds. They'll just show you a one-pager. So if you go and put some terms in a bulky document which you don't give the person at the time of purchase, you can't be held to say that those terms are part of the contract. So as far as I'm aware, government has defaulted. Let's say it plain. That's for those who were not shown the prospectus and so did not read same at the time of purchase. Government has defaulted, pure and simple. You can't add terms to a contract unilaterally later after the contract is ended. You say, yeah. So
and that is why your protest will come on to force the finance minister to pay those bonds, the interest, and the coupon that matured last week.
That's correct, Evans. We have to continue because Evans, you just like from morning we've been doubting the meaning of in line with government's fiscal commitment. And now you see how the professors are explaining the phrase. I told you from day one that Mr. Sophia could not be trusted. And that's what he's doing. Because look, Evans, for the bonds that matured on the 6th of February, why don't we have one sentence? The bonds that matured on the 6th of February, I'm paying tomorrow, 15th February. Just that one sentence. Why does Mr. Sophia have to take hundreds of thousands of citizens through sleepless nights, palpitations, fear and panic? You see where the abuse of office comes. It's not his fault. He has now become very rich through these very bonds. He and the president, they've made millions of Ghana cedis through the bonds that they issued. So he can afford to treat us very shabbily like that. It's not his fault. Because otherwise, I don't get it. If every time he will come and address the state or issue a press release, but you will never find a definite statement that, oh, we are paying on this day. And then you find people coming to hold brief for him that government can pay 15 days later. Evan, the simple question is that at the time we're buying the bonds, did anybody bring a buyer's attention to a prospectus? If there was no such prospectus given to a buyer, he's not bound. It's like your ward is being admitted into a school. When you go, you are given a prospectus. So if you choose not to read, that one is a different matter. But when you are not given the prospectus at all, you are not bound. Government can't subsequently come up with a document to change the terms. You say, so look, government should do the needful. Mr. Sophia and the president, yes, they've made a lot of money from these bonds, but they should remember that we voted for them. So at least decency requires that they should give us a definite date for the payment of the bonds that have matured. Because, Evans, like I keep saying, the way our citizens are getting desperate, the way citizens are getting angry, the government is inviting an Arab Spring. That's an Arab Spring the government is inviting into Ghana. And it's not far-fetched. The president himself, when he was in opposition, referred to such dire situations. Unemployment high, people can't earn a living, and so conditions are ripe for an Arab Spring. Then the president should wake up. It's been said ad nauseam. All we have to do is to cut expenditure. Don't try to run faster than you can. That's what's causing us the trouble. If we're just trying to live within our means, we wouldn't have this problem. So government should cut the expenditure, cut the expenditure, cut the expenditure. So government can go back to Parliament with a new appropriation act. Cut. And Parliament will, I'm sure, uphold it and pass it into law. Let's not live beyond our means. That is what is going to lead to the death of our fellow citizens. And it's an Arab Spring
into Ghana.
Martin, thank you very much. Ikpebu is the convener of the Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana. I want to hear from you if you are one of those individual bondholders or you have money in the pension fund and it's now closed. You heard the announcement from the Finance Ministry. You've heard the analysis of what the clause means, that clause in that statement means, that line there. What do you make of all this? 055-1111-997. After business, clash at University of Ghana between former residents of Commonwealth Hall and the police, with many already arrested.
Boss, we want to make it emphatic clear today that the stone silent by the university management not to kowtow to the decision of the court is what? Tantamount to perjury.
Details as tension rises over school management silence on accommodation controversy after court placed an injunction on the implementation of the residential policy there. George Wiafe is here with business. George, a lot
of things are happening.
A lot to chew on.
A lot of things are happening.
One minute you think, oh, this is done.
But again, what are the fiscal commitments? And if you look through the whole budget, the fiscal commitment has to do with interest payments. Payment of bonds is captured under interest payments, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's part of it. It's part of it. Yeah. I mean, we went through that. There are about five of them. The question, the concern that has been expressed, and Prof expresses the point, is in line with fiscal commitment. So yeah, we are committed.
Yeah.
But then if we have a challenge in meeting that commitment, the implied warning there is that then
until this debt exchange program, we're always meeting our debt commitment, and we expect the finance minister to do that even now.
Right? Prof makes the point that even when we run a deficit, we have serviced our debt. And so if a time comes and the government, because of that clause, is unable to pay the individual bondholders, etc., who were not part, then it would have been the deliberate decision not to, not because you don't have the means.
Interesting arguments are being raised in terms of contracts and all those things. But again, what we are picking up is that they wanted to close this whole offer and then meet the obligations for the February 4th one and the one that matured this week. So let's see what will happen.
I guess the question was, in this statement, what is an opportunity to state when we're going to make that
the
payment.
Uncertainty is still worrying a lot of people with respect to all these things that are happening. So it's critical that these things are done to help in the confidence building in what is actually left.
I know you have more on this.
Well, Evans, the Finance Ministry pegs value of bonds tendered in the domestic debt exchange program at about 83 billion Ghana cedis. I also tell you that about 14 billion Ghana cedis didn't participate in this whole offer. And price of mineral water, more drinks set to go up further as government targets excise duty hikes on these products. The business news on NewsNight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Allianz Life and Ghana Pay. Welcome back to Business on NewsNight. Now, the value of bonds that were tendered in the domestic debt exchange program is valued at 83 billion Ghana cedis. This was captured in a statement released by the Finance Ministry just a while ago. The statement gave further details as to how these things were structured and how can be reported. There is more in this report. The Finance Ministry, in a statement, also revealed that the total value of bonds that was available to be restructured during this period was around 97 billion Ghana cedis. Now, out of this, 83 billion Ghana cedis was tendered for the offer. This should mean that about 14 billion Ghana cedis worth of bonds didn't participate in this domestic debt exchange program. The Ministry of Finance also announced that it has extended the settlement date for the offer from today, 14th of February 2023, 21st of February 2023. The Finance Ministry added that based on some expression of interest from other stakeholders, and a clear market provision of the new bonds was set forth in the exchange memorandum to clarify a clear market provision that will not limit government from issuing domestic public indebtedness and correction to liability management exercise. Two other stories. The International Monetary Fund has appointed Leonard Chomo as the resident advisor in financial sector supervision at the Bank of Ghana. He's expected to provide technical assistance and help build the capacity of the banking supervision function of the Bank of Ghana. Now, at the request of the Bank of Ghana and fully funded by the Switzerland State Secretariat for Economic Affairs. The International Monetary Fund has also signed the resident advisor in financial sector supervision to the Bank of Ghana. He's supposed to help with the Bank of Ghana with respect to supervision and helping with programs under the whole funded IMF program. The price of mineral water and malt drinks are expected to go up further, and that is if government quests to increase the excise duty on these products are granted by Parliament. Now, the Finance Committee in a report has presented to the House for these adjustments to be made. Now, these things will happen after the House approved this request that is coming from the Finance Committee to increase the levies on these products. But General Secretary of the Food and Beverage Association, Samuel Agri, noted that this move is bad for the industry.
Every day we hear increase of taxes. We've reached a point where industry and consumers cannot even afford anymore. And you keep on introducing new taxes. Now, the excuse that the ministry is giving that certain products are harmful for consumption. Cigarettes, yes. E-cigarettes, yes. These are the areas you should be looking at. And then perhaps a certain class of alcoholic beverages that we can increase, at least raise some little revenue from there. Because when you do that increase, we say people of astute income will still go for it.
Samuel Agri is the General Secretary of the Food and Beverage Association. Now, Talo Oil has promised to engage government over the $387 million tax charge against its operations in the country. This was captured in a notice to investors in the country and around the world. There is more in this report.
Talo Oil in the report noted they are committed to finding an amicable solution to the current challenge. This is why it is still engaging the Ghana Revenue Authority on the issue to ensure that their concerns are addressed going forward. Talo Oil noted that despite this engagement, it is still going ahead with the arbitration because its rights under the petroleum laws have been violated, and also want to bring certainty on this issue with all the interested parties. Meanwhile, the Court of Arbitration for International Chamber of Commerce is set to hear a separate case brought by Talo Oil on a $320 million tax charge by the Ghana Revenue Authority on its branch profit assessment in October 2023.
And that is the Business Desk report. In a separate development, Senior Manager, Tax and Regulations at Deloitte Gable Yurinchiado has noted that the action by Talo Oil is in the right direction.
This, in my opinion, would have been envisaged that there could be a point in time where issues of such nature will crop up, and we need an independent party to help bring an amicable solution to some of these things. Of course, if you look at our Revenue Administration Act, there are dispute resolution procedures that are set out in there to help resolve some of these things which emanates from tax audit. Nevertheless, to the extent that you have signed up to an international agreement, the conditions precedent in those international agreements will reign supreme, and Talo reserves the right to either use the charges or the issues set out in the agreement, whichever is very convenient for them.
Senior Manager, Tax and Regulations at Deloitte Ghana, Gilbert Chirenchi. As part of his corporate social responsibility to cooperate to the social and general well-being of the community, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, a COVID-19 screening and blood donation exercise to contribute to their quota of the National Blood Bank. Director General of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Professor Paul Bonsud, reiterated the Council's commitment to ensuring the general well-being of the populace to drive economic development.
The Research Staff Association of CSIR decided that they will undertake blood donation exercise to take blood to support our blood banks. CSIR staff, students from Labone Secondary School, and other people to help donate blood, because we heard the statistics of the National Blood Bank. It's not good. It's not too good that something that we can support. The 30 plus million Ghanaians can all support, but unfortunately, it is not the case. And so this is the little effort that CSIR would want to contribute to the National Blood Bank.
Director General of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Paul Bonsu. Let's turn our attention to the stock market. And if you're a shareholder in GGB, you lost about 18 pesos and is now worth 1 Ghana cedi 68 pesos. However, for those shareholders of Total Energies, it was up by a peso today to close at 4 Ghana cedis 16 pesos. If you hold Unilever shares, it's up by 20 pesos and it closed at 2 Ghana cedis 26 pesos. And those are some interesting price gains on the Ghana Stock Exchange for shareholders. That's all for business on Newsnight. And this whole DDE would just not go away, Evans.
George, thank you very much. And there was a clash today at the University of Ghana between former residents of the Commonwealth Hall and the police. And we understand many have already been arrested. And this is coming on the back of the rising tension over school management silence of accommodation controversy after the court placed an injunction on the implementation of a residential policy. Maxwell Ohagba has been following this story, joins me in the studio. Maxwell, what happened?
Well, the students went there to apparently enforce the court order that has been given, and then that was the point that they clashed, with the police officers who were in front of the Commonwealth Hall. They had with them the court order, which I have here. It says, it is hereby ordered that the defendant herein, referring to the University of Ghana, is hereby restrained either by itself or its officers, assigns, previous agents, workmen, or anybody working under the defendant's instructions from implementing the decision of the defendant's residence board meeting held on 26th November 2022 in respect of the residential policy decision affecting all continuing students of Commonwealth Hall, University of Ghana. So the status quo of the University of Ghana should be maintained as to be before the 26th October 2022 decision was taken. We know that starting this academic year, the university authorities took a decision that only level 100 and graduate students will occupy Commonwealth Hall. Continuing students were therefore distributed to other halls of residence on the university's campus. So after this order came through, the Commonwealth Hall students, former residents of Commonwealth Hall, rushed to their former hall to take over their old beds.
And they were not allowed?
They were not allowed. And we understand that the police has made some arrests on this issue. 18 people, we are told, have been arrested. And the police says the 18 suspects were together with about 200 others believed to be former members of the Commonwealth Hall of the university. The police have been able to contain the situation and calm has been restored. All 18 suspects are in police custody and will be put before the court to face justice. Security, we are told, has been deepened on the campus for academic activities to continue without any hindrance.
Well, Eugene Bediako Jr. is a leader of the aggrieved students.
Here is a group of agitated students. Because as of 8 February, we had lost our residency on University of Ghana campus. Meanwhile, they gave us up to 10 February to make payments. Last Thursday, the courts, the High Court, a court of confidence, jurisprudence and jurisdiction, had given an order that the status quo should remain. And that means that people who were residents of Commonwealth or last academic year, continuing students, all of them are to be made to come back. So what we were expecting from members of management was to update our MIS web so that we will see Commonwealth Hall there and then go and make payments. And after we come here, we'll do manual registration and then we'll be given rooms. Everybody you see here, you can see their bags. They've been sacked from the UJ hostels because they have not been able to pay. And then our demands were simple. We cannot pay. The court has given an order. Take us back. How is that so difficult?
Joining us on the line now is Professor William Boateng of the University of Ghana. Also on the line is the member of the Old Vandas Association and former JCR president of the Commonwealth Hall, Bernard Odro-Techi. Let me start with you, Professor William Boateng. The concern of the students, are they valid? They say the court order, the injunction was clear, hold on, and so they had the right now to go back into the Commonwealth Hall and take residence. Is that a legitimate view to take on this?
Ivan, thank you very much, and let me say good evening to your cherished listeners. Evans Mensah of Ghana is an institution that is law-abiding. And of course, when the court gives an order, the University of Ghana should receive a copy of the court order first. Now, let me say that when the court gives an order, it is not in the hands of the students to enforce the order. I think we need to put that in perspective. And the actions of the students should be condemned unconditionally because the court has given an order and it is not the students who are supposed to enforce the court order. That's the first point that we need to take into account. But the second thing is that the university only got a copy of the court order this evening. And therefore, you cannot just listen to radio and say the court has given an order and therefore you just go and do anything. On record, the university did not have a copy of the court order, and we also need to put that point there. The university also has the right, and I think we need to also understand this. The court has given an order at the High Court. The university has the right to even appeal to that court order.
But until appeal, you have to comply.
So the point is that I have given you an indication that one, the university has not gotten a copy of that court order. And even if that court order has been given, it is not in the hands of the students to enforce that court order. Remember that if students are supposed to be given a room, you don't just forcefully enter the hall and say, I am going to take over the room. You need to go through a process. And therefore, you cannot just say that because the court has given an order, I have the right to do that. And I think we need to put that point to the students because the university has to respect the rules. The university is also supposed to get a copy of the court order, and the university has the right to appeal.
Prof, let me ask you then, going forward, before you appeal, will you allow the students now to take residence?
Evan, it is not as easy as you are saying. Remember, school reopened in the middle of January. This policy has been implemented since January. We have level 100 students who have been given accommodation. So if you want to enforce the court order, you want to eject the level 100 students and forcibly put students there. Remember, and the university has said this time and again, that if you are given a room, that room is not for you in perpetuity. When you are given a room and you pay for it, at the end of the academic year, the room is no more yours. It means that when you come the next academic year, you may have to apply.
Okay.
So you are given a room the next academic year does not mean that the room belongs to you in perpetuity.
But because of time, let me ask you for clarity. Will the university appeal? Can you give me a clear word on this? Will you appeal or not?
The university has the right to appeal.
But will you?
The university got a copy of the court order this evening. The university will look at it and take a decision on that.
Thank you very much. JCR President is a member of the Old Vandas Association, Bernard Odro. Bernard, you just heard the Professor Boateng. Very quickly, briefly, they have difficulties. They say they now received it. They will think about the appeal, but it's not as simple as saying the students should just go back. What do you say to that?
First of all, good
Well, tears of a parent after 6 kindergarten school kids were killed in the most tragic of circumstances at Breman Jamra when the building they were in collapsed on them. Well, thankfully, he had multimedia. We got some support to build the kindergarten school blog, but another structure may soon collapse on the students of the Methodist school in that same vicinity. The multimedia group is a way of averting another disaster, has embarked on a classroom project. The multimedia group, with the support of Star Ghana and the community, has been able to put up the building to the roofing level. An estimated 100,000 cedis will enable us complete the entire project. Apart from cash, we may need wood, roofing sheets, furniture, doors and windows, tiles, marker as well, boards, fans, light switches. Show love to these kids at Breman Jamra.
It is dangerous for us to learn in. When the rain enter the classroom will be very dirty here. So we don't want this class again. We want a new one. So we don't want this class. We want the other one there. We please them to help us this new building so that we can live comfortably in that new room.
Because when it is raining, our ceiling will be removing. The water will be coming inside this room. So we don't want this class again. We want a new one. We feel shaking. When the rain is falling, we feel shaking. We fear that the building will break in. So we want the government to build another school for us. We are telling them to come and help us to build the room because we are begging them to come and help us to build the building.
Well, you can send your donations to 0599-303-8832. The name is Multimedia Group Limited.